Ukraine is celebrating 31 years since its independence. In 1991, the country was formed after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, this day should have been a day of celebration from freedom, but the Ukrainians today find themselves fighting against Russian violence. Before we talk about the 6 months of war in Ukraine, we bring you the top developments this hour. In an emotional speech, President Volodymyr Zelensky told Ukrainians that their country was reborn the day Russia announced that Moscow was launching its special military operation 6 months ago.
To us, Ukraine means the whole of Ukraine, all 25 regions without any concessions or compromises. We don't know these words. They were destroyed by missiles on February 24th. Donbas is Ukraine, and we will get it back no matter how hard this path will be. Crimea is Ukraine, and we will get it back no matter how hard this path will be.
Kiev is unusually silent this Independence Day. Residents of the capital city are fleeing their homes amid fears of intensified Russian action on this day. Gatherings have been banned in Kiev for security reasons, while US officials say Russia is likely to step up its efforts to attack civilian targets. UNICEF says more than 1,000 children have been killed or injured in the last 6 months of war. UNICEF's executive director says this is the number they have been able to confirm and fear the actual figure might actually be higher. President Zelensky paid tribute to fallen Ukrainians. He was joined by his wife and First Lady Elena Zelenska for the ceremony at the memorial wall near Kiev's St. Michael Golden Domed Monastery. The two remembered Ukrainians, both military and non-military service members, who died while fighting to protect their country. US President Joe Biden has announced nearly $3 billion in aid to Ukraine on its Independence Day. Biden says the aid will allow Ukraine to acquire air defense systems, artillery systems and munitions and radars to ensure it can continue to defend itself over the long term. Meanwhile, Russia's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, says the slowing pace of Moscow's military campaign in Ukraine was deliberate and driven by the need to reduce civilian casualties. Well, to get more on all of this, we're being joined live from Kiev by Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Grant. He's a defence expert and is currently working with the Ukrainian Parliament. Well, Lieutenant Colonel, thank you very much for joining us today. I wanted to start by asking you, what's your assessment of where Ukraine finds itself 6 months on from Russia's invasion?
Well, I think that they are in a much better spot than they probably thought they would be a few months ago. I mean, there's no question that Russia has been moving forward with using extreme violence of just shelling from artillery and destroying everything that they can in front of it. And as you know, they've been attacking attacking civilians all over the country since the war started. But the Ukrainian army is holding, and with luck and with the equipment that it's getting from Western countries, with luck they may be able to turn the tide and actually start pushing Russia back from places. Certainly with the use of the rocket launcher systems that they've had from countries like America and Great Britain, they're much more able now to target things in depth, like ammunition depots, command posts, and railway junctions, and most recently the bridges near Kherson. And these things are definitely having a debilitating effect on the ability of the Russians to fight. So I think Ukraine is probably slightly more optimistic now than they might have been, as I said, a couple of months ago.
And President Biden, with this latest military aid package announced in the last couple of hours, says that it's to help Ukraine really over the long term. Do you think there is that acknowledgement from the United States and from other Western countries that this conflict now could drag on for months, potentially even years?
Well, let's hope that on the first part that the West actually does realise that it is going to drag on. Because there's no sign that Russia intends to stop. In fact, if anything, the recent plea or peace plan that President Erdogan brought to Zelensky was completely bizarre and showed that Russia has no grasp at all that Ukraine is actually in a good position, and the general sort of feeling from Russia in what they're doing is that they intend to keep going. Their mobilization, their concerns about getting the defense industry to actually to pick up to fight the war, and they're asking other countries to actually to give them equipment. Now, none of those things are things that you're doing if you're thinking of giving up. So I think that we are in for a long haul and probably an extremely bloody and messy winter. But let's hope that Ukraine comes out of it on the up, not push back any further.
And from a non-military perspective, what's the mood currently like in Kiev as Ukraine marks 6 months into the war, but also their annual Independence Day?
That's a very good question. I mean, there's sort of two sides to this. I mean, the first side is that there is a growing stubbornness about on the military side and on people that are concerned with it because they've had enough of their families and their friends being killed, and they want to finish this. But of course, that also then leads to tiredness. And I mean, several people have spoken to me and asked me in the last few days, when is this going to end? And of course, I can't give them any joy on that. And I just have to say that you've got to remain stubborn, because this could go on for a year or 2 years more. If Russia just has no desire to stop or to give in, then the Ukrainians certainly haven't any desire to give in. So, you've got two stubborn countries there, and they're going to keep going until one of them wins, I think.
And in terms of your dealing with military personnel, with the parliament there in Ukraine, what sort of support have you been able to give and offer, in particular from a Western perspective, the way that the views are coming from the West, that support? I mean, is that being welcomed there from the people in Ukraine?
From the military, yes, very much so. And I have a lot of contacts and a lot of communication at various levels. I get a lot of questions as the war has progressed, and it's raised different subjects for people and how we do things. At the moment, more of the questions of how do we actually view what we're doing into the future, and how do we use the Western equipment better and to more effect, and does that mean we have to change organizations, which of course they do. Because the equipment is designed for a completely different type of structure and a different type of warfare. So there are a lot of those questions and a lot of things going on, and it forces me to write quite regularly. The Parliament is slightly different because the Parliament is I think it's in many ways has become disassociated from the war, and a lot of the things that the Parliament is doing are not directly positive in ways that perhaps we would like them to be. And I think it reflects the fact that until the war actually started, a lot of the parliamentarians were quite convinced it wasn't going to happen. And so they're playing, you might say they're playing a game of catch up, of actually trying to get themselves into the war as it is. But there are still a lot of them that haven't really grasped the enormity of what they, as parliamentarians, need to do. It's a difficult task.
Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Grant, thank you very much for joining us live from Kiev on this broadcast.
Thank you.